Welcome to the audio program for The Complete Guide to the Toefl Test, IBT Edition, by Bruce Rogers. Copyright 2007 by Thomson ELT, a part of the Thomson Corporation, Boston, Massachusetts. All rights reserved. Integrated Speaking Preview Test. Directions.
The last 4 tasks of the speaking section are integrated speaking tasks. The 3rd and 4th questions involve a reading text and a listening passage. You will have 45 seconds in which to read a short text. You will then hear a short conversation or part of a lecture on the same topic. You may take notes on both the reading and listening passage. You will then see a question on the screen asking about the information that you have just read and heard, and you will have 30 seconds in which to plan a response. When you hear a beep on the audio program, you will have 60 seconds in which to answer the question. The 5th and 6th questions involve a short listening passage. You may take notes as you listen. After listening to the conversation or lecture, you will see a question, and you will have 20 seconds in which to plan your response. When you hear a beep on the audio program, you will have 60 seconds in which to answer the question. During actual tests, a clock on the screen will tell you how much preparation time or how much response time, speaking time, remains for each question. It is important that you time yourself accurately when you take this practice test. If possible, record your response. On an actual test, your responses will be recorded and evaluated by trained raters.
Task 3.
Beginning this semester, all faculty members at Monroe University are required to hand out copies of the university's plagiarism policy. You will have 45 seconds in which to read the policy. Begin reading now. Now listen to 2 students discussing this notice.
So it looks like they're serious about stopping plagiarism. I've gotten a copy of this in every class.
Yeah, well, in general, I don't have any argument with the policy. I'm just glad they're finally making this policy, making it a little more public, passing it out in every class. If I'd known about this policy a couple of years ago, I wouldn't have gotten in trouble.
Wait a minute. You got in trouble for plagiarism?
Well, it wasn't exactly plagiarism. At least, I didn't consider it plagiarism, but it did, violate the policy. See that part about using the same research paper for more than one class? Well, I was writing a paper for a geology class and one for a chemistry class. They were both about hydrocarbon compounds, and I used one section of my geology paper in my chemistry paper. I didn't know I couldn't do that. I'll tell you one thing. That software for detecting plagiarism really works, or at least it did for my paper.
So what happened? Did you just get a warning?
No, at the time I was in my 2nd year here, and so the grade on both my papers was lowered by a whole letter grade. That's another thing about this policy. I don't understand why a 1st-year student gets a warning and a 2nd-year student gets a lower grade. That doesn't seem right to me.
Yeah, I know. That seems strange to me, too. I suppose the idea is the longer you've been a student here, the more aware of the policy you should be. I guess you should be glad that it didn't happen when you were an upperclassman, or you would have failed both classes.
Now get ready to answer the question.
Question 3. The man expresses his opinion of the policy. State his opinion and explain the reasons he gives for having that opinion. Please start talking now. Please stop talking now.
Task 4.
Read these paragraphs from a textbook describing animal camouflage. Begin reading now. Now listen to part of a lecture in a zoology class.
So, we've been talking about ways animals avoid predators, especially how animals use camouflage to stay safe, to hide from their predators. Let's consider an animal called the sloth. The sloth is a mammal that lives in the forests of Central America, South America. They hang from trees and they're lazy, very slow-moving. They sleep 15 hours a day. Anyway, sloths are a very dull color. Their fur is a dull brown, and it has dull green streaks in it. Know what those green streaks are? They're algae, a kind of plant. This animal moves around so slowly that plants grow on it. Anyway, this dull green and brown color camouflages the sloth when it's hanging from trees. Then there's a butterfly. You may have heard of it. It's called the blue morpho. It also lives in Central and South America. It has beautiful, shiny blue wings. It's so pretty, its nickname is the living jewel. You look at a blue morpho, you think, now this creature is not camouflaged. But in fact it is. Blue morpho's wings are only bright blue when viewed from the top. The bottoms of its wings are dark brown. When it flaps its wings and flies, there are alternating flashes of bright blue and brown. When birds see this, they think they're seeing flashes of blue sky between trees. So although blue morphos sure don't seem camouflaged to us, they are basically invisible to predators.
Now get ready to answer the question.
Question 4. The professor describes how camouflage protects two types of animals. Explain how this is related to the concepts of camouflage described in the reading. Please start talking now. Please stop talking now.
Task 5.
Listen to a conversation between two students.
Hey, Lucy. How are things?
Hi, Rick. I don't know. Okay, I suppose. I'm just exhausted.
Yeah, you do look kind of tired. How come?
Well, I just never get enough sleep. My classes are really hard this term, especially my physiology class. So I'm in the library until it closes at 11, and then I study for a couple of hours or so when I get back to my dorm room.
Yeah, I've had a couple semesters like that myself.
I feel especially dead in the afternoon, and I have a 1 o'clock and a 3 o'clock class. Yesterday, the most incredibly embarrassing thing happened in my physiology class. I actually fell asleep. I've never done that before. And Dr. Daniels was like, "Am I boring you, Miss Jenkins?"
That's embarrassing. You should do what I do. Just get yourself some coffee.
Yeah, I bought a cup of coffee from the vending machine the other day. It was terrible.
Vending machine coffee's usually pretty awful. You could walk up to College Avenue. There are a couple coffee shops up there.
Yeah, but it's pretty expensive, and I don't know. Sometimes coffee just makes me really nervous. I don't feel that awake. I just feel nervous.
Hey, here's an idea. What buildings are your afternoon classes in?
One's in Old Main and one's in Castleton.
Those aren't far from your dorm. Here's what you should do. Go by your dorm and lie down for 15 or 20 minutes between your two classes.
I don't know. I haven't taken a nap during the day, probably since I was in kindergarten.
Yeah, but you don't have to sleep. Just lie down and completely relax. If you sleep, that's fine. If not, I still think you'll find yourself refreshed.
Now get ready to answer the question.
Question 5. The man offers Lucy two possible solutions to her problem. Discuss her problem and then explain which of the two solutions you think is better and why you think so. Please start talking now. Please stop talking now.
Task 6.
Listen to part of a lecture in a linguistics class.
You know, Wednesday after class, a student came up to me and said, "Professor, you're constantly using the terms language and dialect in class, but you never really define these words." Fair enough, I guess I haven't. And there's a good reason why not. I'm afraid to. Because, in my opinion, there's no good way to distinguish between these two terms. The standard definition of dialect is this: they're forms of one language that are mutually intelligible to speakers of other forms of the same language. If you have someone from Jamaica, say, and someone from India, and they're seated next to each other on an airplane, they'll be able to have a conversation. They'll more or less understand each other, even though those are two very different dialects of English. But consider the various forms of Chinese. A person from southern China can't understand a person from Beijing. Yet these forms of Chinese are usually considered dialects, not separate languages. Now, people who speak different languages are not supposed to be intelligible to those who cannot speak that language. But what about Danish and Norwegian? Danish speakers and Norwegian speakers can understand each other perfectly well, but Danish and Norwegian are considered separate languages, not dialects of the same language. Why? Who knows? I suppose part of it's national pride. Countries are proud of owning a language. In fact, there's an old joke among linguists that a language is a dialect with an army and a navy. Anyway, these questions, what is a language, what is a dialect, they're difficult to answer, and I guess that's why I've avoided them up till now.
Now get ready to answer the question.
Question 6. Using specific examples and points from the lecture, explain the professor's concept of dialects and languages. Please start talking now. Please stop talking now.
This is the end of the Integrated Speaking Preview Test. Lesson 17, Announcement Discussion Task. Sample.
So it looks like they're serious about stopping plagiarism. I've gotten a copy of this in every class.
Yeah, well, in general, I don't have any argument with the policy. I'm just glad they're finally making this policy, making it a little more public, passing it out in every class. If I'd known about this policy a couple of years ago, I wouldn't have gotten in trouble.
Wait a minute. You got in trouble for plagiarism?
Well, it wasn't exactly plagiarism. At least, I didn't consider it plagiarism. But it did, violate the policy. See that part about using the same research paper for more than one class? Well, I was writing a paper for a geology class and one for a chemistry class. They were both about hydrocarbon compounds, and I used one section of my geology paper in my chemistry paper. I didn't know I couldn't do that. I'll tell you one thing, That software for detecting plagiarism really works, or at least it did for my paper.
So what happened? Did you just get a warning?
No, at the time I was in my second year here, and so the grade on both my papers was lowered by a whole letter grade. That's another thing about this policy. I don't understand why a first-year student gets a warning and a second-year student gets a lower grade. That doesn't seem right to me.
Yeah, I know. That seems strange to me, too. I suppose the idea is the longer you've been a student here, the more aware of the policy you should be. I guess you should be glad that it didn't happen when you were an upperclassman, or you would have failed both classes.
The man expresses his opinion of the policy. State his opinion and explain the reasons he gives for having that opinion.
Sample response.
The notice tells about the plagiarism policy and defines plagiarisms. It says a plagiarism is using someone else's words, like your own words. It can be a little bit, just a sentence or a whole paper. It can be from other students or from books, websites, it doesn't matter where. It can also be that you use the same paper for more than one class. You hand in one paper for more than one class. The announcement also lists the punishments for plagiarism. These are worse for the older students than for the new students. It says that there is software used to find a plagiarism. The man says that he generally agrees with the plagiarism policy, but he says that he just wishes that they published it more in the past because he didn't know about it. The reason for that is he violated the policy by using part of one paper in two classes, for geology and chemistry. His grades were lowered for his two classes. He also says he doesn't understand why there are different punishments for different students. The woman says it's maybe because students who have been at Monroe University for longer times, they should know this policy.
Exercise 17.1. Task A.
Listen to two students discuss the announcement.
Wow, I guess Professor Roboto was pretty upset about those cell phones going off in his class last week.
Well, yeah, I guess so. It happened, 4 times?
Maybe 5. I can't believe people were so thoughtless that they left their phones turned on and set to ring.
I know, that's just rude.
But don't you think it's kinda harsh that you can't turn off the ring and set the phone to vibrate? I mean, what if there's a family emergency?
I don't agree. The professor's right. It's distracting to see people messing with their phones in class. As far as I'm concerned, students can go an hour without their cell phones.
Task B.
Listen to two students discuss the announcement.
Wow, this is great. This is a break for me.
Really? Why's that? Do you...
Yeah, I do. I have 5 way overdue books from the science library. I checked them out when I was writing a paper last spring, and then I never got around to returning them before I left for the summer. So by the time I got back here in September, well, I couldn't afford to return them.
How much is the fine a day?
It's 25 cents a day per book, so $1.25 a day for 6 months. I owe a lot on them.
Well, you better hurry. The last day for the amnesty program is Friday. You only have 2 days left.
I'm going to take those books over there this evening. Wow, I've really been worried about this. You know, they won't let you graduate if you don't return the library materials and pay all your fines.
Task C.
Listen to two students discuss the announcement.
Hey, this isn't good. I just put a message up on that bulletin board saying I was looking for a roommate.
Well, there are plenty of other bulletin boards around campus where you can put that up. Or you could put an ad in the campus paper.
Yeah, but I went into a room with another computer science major. I mean, when I talk to most people about computers, they just look at me. I wanted to live with someone who understood me.
Well, just say in your ad you're looking for another person who's obsessed with computers. But you have to admit, that bulletin board is so crowded with notices about roommates and potlucks and study groups that you can't find any real bulletins from the department.
Yeah, that's true. There are messages on there from months ago. maybe years ago.
Task D.
Listen to two students discuss the announcement.
So, did you go to this film festival last year?
Yeah, I thought it sounded pretty good, so I bought a weekend pass. And I hated every movie I saw. I mean, they didn't make any sense, and they were really boring.
Yeah, some independent films don't make sense, and some of them are boring, I guess. But not all. I mean, I've seen some independent films that...
Well, I saw 3 or 4 movies last year, and they were all like that, confusing and boring.
So, I'm guessing you don't want to go to the festival with me this year.
Exercise 17.2. Task A.
Listen to two students discuss the announcement.
Oh, good. Another experiment.
What? You'd take part in a psychology experiment? I don't know if I would. I'd feel like a lab rat or something. I don't know. I just think it would be dangerous.
Well, I wouldn't volunteer for any medical experiments or any experiment where I had to take any kind of drug or anything, but these psychology experiments, they're pretty harmless. I've already taken part in 2 or 3.
Really? You have?
Well, it's a good way to pick up a little spending money, and I've earned credits towards graduation as well.
But you have trouble sleeping?
Yeah, and not just once a week. 3 or 4 nights a week, I'm tossing and turning and not able to get to sleep until way after midnight. That's one of the good things about this experiment. According to this notice, I might learn how to fall asleep more easily.
Task B.
Listen to two students discuss the announcement.
What are you doing this weekend?
I think I'm going to this internship fair on Saturday.
You're going to that? Why? You want to spend your summer doing volunteer work?
No, but these aren't all volunteer positions. Some of them are internships. Most internships are paid positions.
Yeah, but I bet you don't get paid much.
I don't know. My sister was an intern at an advertising agency. She was paid pretty well. And besides, being an intern, it's good experience. It looks good on your resume, especially if you find a position in your own field. My sister found a job at a New York ad agency right after she graduated, mainly because she had that experience as an intern.
Well, I've already found a summer job. I'm going to be working as a lifeguard again at Gold Beach. I admit, it doesn't look that great on my resume, but it's a lot of fun.
Task C.
Listen to two students discuss the announcement.
This is interesting. I always thought you had to be a theater arts major to even try out for a play.
I guess not. Why? Are you thinking about trying out for a part in this play?
Well, I think I am. I was in a play when I was in high school. It was just a small role, but I guess I caught the acting bug. And guess what? That high school play I was in, it was one of George Bernard Shaw's plays too. I really like Shaw.
But you only have a little bit of acting experience.
Yeah, but that's why I'm so excited about this. It says right here, no prior acting experience is required. So I guess it won't matter that I haven't had a lot of experience.
Well, good luck.
Even if I don't get a part, I might see if there's something else I could do. Work on costumes or the sets or lighting or something.
Task D.
Listen to two students discuss the announcement.
So, you're signing up for one of these finals workshops?
Yeah, I figure it can't hurt to try. I mean, maybe it will help.
You don't seem... you seem to cope with stress really well.
Well, you know what they say. It's the people who hold it in who are most affected by stress. But you know what? When I was taking my chemistry midterm test, I had such bad test anxiety that I could barely finish my exam. My palms were sweating, and I felt like my stomach was tied up in knots.
Well, in that case, maybe you should go to one of these workshops. But this notice says that they're going to teach you how to eat and exercise to release stress. I already know I should exercise and eat healthy, but There's no time to do that when you're in the middle of finals week. You don't have time to go work out, and you sure don't have time to be cooking healthy meals.
Yeah, I guess you're right, but I'm mostly interested in learning how to deal with stress during an exam. How to deal with test anxiety, So if I learn a few techniques for doing that, I'll be happy.
Exercise 17.3. Task A.
The woman expresses her opinion of the announcement about the psychology experiment. State her opinion and explain the reasons she gives for having that opinion. Please start talking now. Please stop talking now.
Task B.
The man expresses his opinion of the summer internship fair. State his opinion and explain the reasons he gives for having that opinion. Please start talking now. Please stop talking now.
Task C.
The woman expresses her opinion of the announcement about the audition. State her opinion and explain the reasons she gives for having that opinion. Please start talking now. Please stop talking now.
Task D.
The man expresses his opinion of the stress management workshop. State his opinion and explain the reasons he gives for having that opinion. Please start talking now. Please stop talking now.
Lesson 18. General Specific Task. Sample.
Listen and read along as you hear a lecture in a zoology class.
So, we've been talking about ways animals avoid predators, especially how animals use camouflage to stay safe, to hide from their predators. Let's consider an animal called the sloth. The sloth is a mammal that lives in the forests of Central America, South America. They hang from trees and they're lazy, very slow-moving. They sleep 15 hours a day. Anyway, sloths are a very dull color. Their fur is a dull brown, and it has dull green streaks in it. Know what those green streaks are? They're algae, a kind of plant. This animal moves around so slowly that plants grow on it. Anyway, this dull green and brown color camouflages the sloth when it's hanging from trees. Then there's a butterfly. You may have heard of it. It's called the blue morpho. It also lives in Central and South America. It has beautiful, shiny blue wings. It's so pretty, its nickname is the living jewel. You look at a blue morpho, you think, now this creature is not camouflaged. But in fact it is. Blue morpho's wings are only bright blue when viewed from the top. The bottoms of its wings are dark brown. When it flaps its wings and flies, there are alternating flashes of bright blue and brown. When birds see this, they think they're seeing flashes of blue sky between trees. So although blue morphos sure don't seem camouflaged to us, they're basically invisible to predators.
the professor describes how camouflage protects two types of animals. Explain how this is related to the concepts of camouflage described in the reading.
Sample response.
The reading discusses, it says that all animals are in danger, that they can be eaten by predators. And one way animals can be safe from predators is with camouflage. Camouflage, this means that an animal is hard to see by other animals. This animal doesn't look visible. The reading says some animals that use camouflage, they look dull, and it's hard to notice them. But some don't look that way. They are easy to see. It is easy for us to see them, but not for the predators to see them. The professor talks about two examples of animals that use camouflage. One example of this is the sloth. Sloth is a lazy animal. It is brown and has green color from an algae plant that grows in the fur because it moves so slow. So the sloth is an example of an animal that is hard to see because its colors are dull. The other example is the blue morpho butterfly. Like the reading said, some animals, they don't look camouflage because they are bright colors. The blue morpho is really bright blue. But when birds see these flying butterflies, they see flashes of sky through trees. That's what the butterfly looks like to them. So blue morphos are camouflage too.
Exercise 18.1, Task A.
Listen to a lecture in a mathematics class.
Now, we've been talking about numeral systems. As our textbook says, most numeral systems have been base 10. But before we move on, I wanted to mention that not all numeral systems are base 10. One system used by the Yuki Indians of California is base 8. That's because the Yukis counted the spaces between their fingers rather than their fingers themselves. So if the Yukis used our number words, they would count like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 20, and so on. Another system that still has a major impact on us today is the system used by the Sumerian people, the Sumerians. They lived in West Asia about 3,000 years ago. They used a very complex base 60 system. There were 60 separate symbols for numbers. Now, the reason I say the system had a big impact, well, how many seconds are there in a minute? 60, right? How many minutes in an hour? 60 again. So as you can see, the Sumerian system has a big impact on the way we measure time and in a few other situations. But the Sumerian system isn't used otherwise. It's very difficult to do calculations in a base 60 system. It's not impossible, mind you. It's merely very difficult.
Task B.
Listen to a lecture in an anthropology class.
So, anyone know what kind of dolls these are?
I'm not sure what they're called, but they're from the Southwest, aren't they?
Right, from the Hopi people who live in the Southwest, in New Mexico.
Aren't they called Kachina dolls?
Yeah, Kachina dolls. And what are they used for?
I don't know. Just to play with, I guess.
Kachina dolls are not just toys. They're, I guess you'd call them educational toys. They provide a kind of religious training. The dolls represent Kachina spirits that are important to the Hopi in their day-to-day life. These dolls teach the Hopi children what the spirits' names are and what they look like.
Are there a lot of these spirits? I mean, Is it hard to keep them straight?
As a matter of fact, there are over 200 Kachina spirits. So that's why the Hopi children need these dolls.
Task C.
Listen to a lecture in a chemistry class.
Rust is the common name for a common chemical, iron oxide. So, in other words, rust is formed by the oxidation of iron. You need 3 things to get rust: iron, of course, and air, and finally water. And rust is worse when the water contains salt. That's why you see so much rust near the seacoast. Rust is a type of corrosion. It causes lots of problems. Rust can make iron and steel. Of course, steel is just a mixture of iron with other metals. It can make iron and steel fragile, make it break easily. It affects all kinds of stuff: cars, ships, industrial equipment, farming equipment, military hardware, almost anything made of steel. People spend millions of dollars every year trying to protect metal from rust or replacing equipment that's too rusted to use.
Task D.
Listen to a lecture in a psychology class.
So, Professor, what kinds of experiments were done on these twins?
Well, lots of experiments have been done. Many of them were medical. They had to do with illnesses.
But what about the psychological experiments?
Well, there have been quite a few, but one of the most famous was an investigation of happiness.
Happiness? How can you inherit happiness?
Well, I guess I should say the capacity for happiness, the ability to be happy.
So what did they find out about happiness?
Well, one study showed that among the subjects of the experiment, happiness has nothing to do with how much money you have, with your job, with your marital status. According to one study, for 80% of the subjects, it all has to do with genetics.
I don't know. That just doesn't seem to make sense to me.
Well, you're not the only one who feels that way. A lot of psychologists don't think much of twin research. For one thing, many of the separated twins have actually had various degrees of contact. Some of them spent a year or more together as infants. Some of them got in touch with each other as teenagers or as adults. Anyway, as the textbook points out, there won't be many more experiments like this in the future.
Exercise 18.2. Task A.
Now listen to a lecture in a zoology class.
Now, in southern Africa, there's a bird that's called the hammerkop. Its name means hammerhead in the Afrikaans language. The hammerkop builds an absolutely huge nest in the forks of trees. You can see this nest from over 1 kilometer away. It's made of, I don't know, maybe 8,000 sticks. The nest sometimes holds several generations of hammerkops. There are at least 3 rooms. The highest is the sleeping room. This is where the female lays her eggs. When the babies grow up, they move into a middle room. Then there's a room which serves as a lookout post. Once, people had a pretty interesting belief about hammerkops. People thought that hammerkops carried baby snakes to their nests and then brought food to these snakes. It was thought that, when they grew up, the snakes would protect the hammerkops like faithful family dogs. This story originated probably because people saw snakes that had moved into hammerkop nests after they'd been abandoned by the birds.
Task B.
Now listen to a lecture in a geology class.
Well then, let me talk about marble for a few minutes. Marble, it's a type of metamorphic rock. Marble is formed from limestone. Now, limestone is a kind of sedimentary rock, but limestone is much softer, much more easily broken than marble. It is formed deep in the Earth's crust over millions of years. Marble formed from pure limestone is almost pure white. Impurities, different types of minerals mixed in with the limestone, these give marble its different colors: green, yellow, tan, pink, and so on. Marble is valued for its beauty and its strength. It's been used for temples, monuments, statues. It's still used for building today, especially for public buildings.
Task C.
Now listen to a lecture in a journalism class.
Today, I want to start off by focusing on one of the more influential journalists of the early 20th century, Ida Tarbell. She began reporting for a magazine in 1894. She was interested in writing about corporations, especially about the Standard Oil Company, so she became an investigative reporter. She was one of the famous muckrakers that we read about last week. Now, Ida Tarbell spent 2 years studying Standard Oil's corporate records, interviewing company officials. She even met with the director of the corporation. For some reason, he trusted her and told her all kinds of things. In 1904, she published a series of articles about Standard Oil. Her articles gave details about all kinds of corporate scandals, abuses of power, unfair practices. These articles made her readers angry, and not just angry at Standard Oil, but at trusts in general. And it was probably Tarbell's writings that caused Congress to break up Standard Oil in 1911.
Task D.
Now listen to a discussion in a photography class.
Okay, everyone. Last class, we were talking about some of the advantages of taking monochromatic photos rather than color photos. Today, I'm going to start by showing you 2 monochromatic photos of the same street scene in Boston. Here's one. Take a good look. Okay, now, here's the other. What can you tell me about these 2 photos?
Well, the second one is obviously much older.
Oh? And why do you say that?
Well, I don't know, it just looks older.
Okay. Actually, they're both the same age.
Really?
Yeah, really. I took them both myself a year or so ago. But you're right, the second photograph does look older. What else did you notice?
The first one the light seems different. It seems harsher somehow. There's a lot more contrast between the shadow and the lit portions of the picture.
Good point. What else?
Well, the second one has a kind of brownish look to it, a brownish tint.
Okay, very good. Actually, these 2 photos were just developed using 2 different processes. Today in the darkroom, we'll develop some black and white film, and I'll show you the difference between the 2 processes.
Exercise 18.3. Task A.
The professor's lecture is about the nest of the hammercop bird. Describe the hammercop's nest and explain why it is a good example of an enclosed nest. Please start talking now. Please stop talking now.
Task B.
The professor lectures about marble. Describe this type of rock and explain why it is a typical metamorphic rock. Please start talking now. Please stop talking now.
Task C.
The professor lectures about the journalist Ida Tarbell. Describe her accomplishments and explain why she is considered a muckraker. Please start talking now. Please stop talking now.
Task D.
The professor and the students discuss two photographs. Describe the photographs using information from the discussion and the reading passage. Please start talking now. Please stop talking now.
Lesson 19. Problem Solution Task. Sample.
Listen to a conversation between two students.
Hey, Lucy. How are things?
Hi, Rick. I don't know. Okay, I suppose. I'm just exhausted.
Yeah, you do look kind of tired. How come?
Well, I just never get enough sleep. My classes are really hard this term, especially my physiology class. So I'm in the library until it closes at 11, and then I study for a couple of hours or so when I get back to my dorm room.
Yeah, I've had a couple semesters like that myself.
I feel especially dead in the afternoon, and I have a 1 o'clock and a 3 o'clock class. Yesterday, the most incredibly embarrassing thing happened in my physiology class. I actually fell asleep. I've never done that before. And Dr. Daniels was like, "Am I boring you, Miss Jenkins?"
That's embarrassing. You should do what I do. Just get yourself some coffee.
Yeah, I bought a cup of coffee from the vending machine the other day. It was terrible.
Vending machine coffee's usually pretty awful. You could walk up to College Avenue. There are a couple coffee shops up there.
Yeah, but it's pretty expensive, and I don't know. Sometimes coffee just makes me really nervous. I don't feel that awake. I just feel nervous.
Hey, here's an idea. What buildings are your afternoon classes in?
One's in Old Main and one's in Castleton.
Those aren't far from your dorm. Here's what you should do. Go by your dorm and lie down for 15 or 20 minutes between your two classes.
I don't know. I haven't taken a nap during the day, probably since I was in kindergarten.
Yeah, but you don't have to sleep. Just lie down and completely relax. If you sleep, that's fine. If not, I still think you'll find yourself refreshed.
Now listen to a question about the conversation.
The man offers Lucy two possible solutions to her problem. Discuss her problem and then explain which of the two solutions you think is better and why you think so.
Sample response.
Well, this conversation about a problem that this woman, Lucy, that she have, her main problem is with not so much sleep. She has very difficult class and has to study too much for 11 hours at library. So she is exhausting and felt asleep in her class. The man tell her drink some coffee, but she doesn't like taste of coffee, especially from vending machine. He suggests she get coffee from the people who sell on the street, but she say it's too expensive. She say coffee sometime make her nervous. Then he suggests she go to her dormitory and sleep a short time. Lucy say not sleep during day for a long time since she a kid, but he tell her not have to feel asleep, just relaxing. I suggest Lucy, get a nap too. I think is better for her than coffee, because coffee make her nervous, but if she rests in her bed, maybe feel not so tired, feel refreshing. Sometimes in afternoon, I take a little rest. I feel much more awake. So I think she should go to her dormitory and take it easy.
Exercise 19.3, Task A.
Listen to a conversation between a nurse and a student.
Hi, I'm Nurse Greenwell. What can I do for you?
Hi. Well, first off, I'm a smoker.
Okay.
I've been smoking since I was in, I don't know, maybe my 3rd year of high school. I smoke about, well, nearly a pack a day.
That's quite a lot.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, about 6 months ago, I got interested in speed skating. I've been playing hockey and skating off and on for years, but I don't know. I just all of a sudden got interested in competitive speed skating.
Gotcha. And that's a pretty energetic sport, isn't it?
You bet. So you probably see where I'm going with this. I don't have nearly as much endurance as I should have. I get out of breath pretty easily because of the smoking.
I see. I can see where that would be a problem for you.
Yeah, so anyway, I've tried to quit on my own a few times, but no luck.
Did you try to quit all at once?
Yeah, but one time I lasted about 3 days. The next time I tried to quit, I had this really stressful day and, by 2 in the afternoon, I was smoking again.
I'm not surprised. 95% of people who try to quit on their own, who don't take part in a program, they end up going back to smoking.
Really? I guess I'm not that surprised. It's hard. Well, anyway, I stopped by here because my girlfriend told me that the health center had some programs. You know, some programs to help people kick the habit.
Yeah, she's right, we do. The health center sponsors weekly Smoke Stoppers programs.
So, do you use hypnosis?
No. Hypnosis isn't part of our treatment program.
'Cause I've always heard that's the easiest way to quit. You just get hypnotized and then you don't have any more desire to smoke.
Well, some people have had success with hypnosis. I don't think it's quite as painless, quite as simple as you make it sound, but you still might want to give our program a try.
So what does your program consist of?
Well, nicotine is the addictive chemical in cigarettes, so we provide you with what's called a nicotine replacement system. Some people use nicotine gum, some people use an inhaler, some people use a patch. We also teach you a lot of techniques to help you get through those first few weeks. That's a tough time. And we provide a support group of other people who are going through the process of trying to quit as well.
Well, I was thinking, I'd really like to try hypnosis.
Well, you can try it, of course. There are several trained hypnotherapists in town, but their treatments are fairly expensive. If you're a student here, our Smoke Stoppers programs are free.
Task B.
Listen to a conversation between 2 students.
Hey, Dennis, did you get tickets for the play Saturday night?
No, I couldn't. I went by the box office, but they wouldn't take my check.
Why not?
I didn't have the right ID.
Really? Couldn't you just have shown them your student ID card?
I did, but for some reason, they wanted 2 forms of picture ID.
So, why didn't you show them your driver's license?
Believe it or not, I don't have one.
You don't? Really?
Well, I got one when I turned 16, but since I've been a student here, I haven't had a car on campus, and I really haven't needed a license. I walk or ride my bike everywhere I need to go.
You know, you can get an official state ID card. It's less expensive than getting a driver's license, and you don't have to take the written test or the driving test.
Oh, yeah? Where do I get one of those?
Same place as you get your driver's license, the Department of Motor Vehicles.
I should probably look into that.
If it were me, though, I think I'd just renew your driver's license. I mean, you don't have a car now, but who knows when some situation will come up when you want to drive. And I think it's good for 5 years.
I guess I could give it some thought. Right now I need to go to an ATM and get some cash to get those tickets.
Task C.
Listen to a conversation between a student and her chemistry professor.
So, Tina, I asked you to stop by because, well, your grades on the unit tests have been fine, quite good, but your lab reports have been a little disappointing, and they are an important part of your grade.
Well, yeah, things aren't going so well in the lab.
Really? And why's that?
Well, I hate to say this, I really do, but it's kind of Robert's fault. He's my lab partner and...
Robert Lewis?
Yeah, he and I went to the same high school and, well, he asked me to be his lab partner on the first day of class and I didn't really know how to say no.
And so he's not so good in the lab?
No, Professor, he doesn't have much talent for lab work, to say the least. For one thing, he's not careful when he measures chemicals. And then, he breaks test tubes and glass beakers, and he's burned himself twice.
Really? I had no idea.
The worst thing, though, is that I'm the one who has to do almost all of the write-up, the lab report. He doesn't take notes while we're doing the experiments, and then afterwards he just expects me to write up the results. And, well, I guess I've been so discouraged by his lack of help that I haven't done a great job. Is there any way you could assign me another lab partner?
I just don't know, Tina. Maybe I could do that, but all the other students are used to working with the lab partners that they have now.
Yeah, that's true. And I guess it's not fair for anyone else to have to work with Robert.
Well, if you want, I'll talk to Robert. I could tell him that he's got to be more careful in lab and share the work when it comes to doing the report. I mean, you both get a grade on your report, so you both should work on it. He's taking advantage of you.
Yeah, something needs to be done. This really can't go on.
Task D.
Listen to a conversation between two students.
Well, I've been trying to decide what to do about, I have this, situation.
What's the matter?
Well, you know my friend Jack?
Sure. Well, I know him a little.
Well, he's down in Mexico on spring break. And, you see, Jack has this pet rat.
Jack has a rat?
Yeah, I guess it's not actually a rat. It's a mouse. A white mouse. Its name is Samson. And Jack asked me to take care of Samson while he's gone.
Okay.
So anyway, last night I was trying to sleep, and you know how mice and little rodents like that have those wheels in their cages?
Right, so they can get some exercise.
Uh-huh. So this wheel in Samson's cage was really squeaky, really noisy, and Samson was running on it all night long, and I can't tell you how annoying the noise was. After a couple of hours of this, I got up, and I put the mouse in an old shoebox. I didn't realize that mice could chew right through cardboard. So when I woke up this morning, no mouse. Samson vanished.
Oh no! So, you've searched your apartment?
Yeah, he's not here. I have a tiny apartment, you know, and there aren't many places for even a mouse to hide. I guess he escaped under the door.
And what are you going to do then?
Well, I thought I'd go down to a pet store and buy another mouse that looks just like Samson.
Wait, you can't do that. You can't just substitute one mouse for Jack's pet and not tell him.
It's a mouse. You can't tell one mouse from another.
Still, it's just not honest. It's not fair to your friend Jack. You've got to call Jack in Mexico and tell him what happened.
Well, I guess you're right. It'll ruin his whole trip, though. You don't know how much that mouse means to Jack. He's really attached to Samson.